of this session. Today we will talk about 5 IT security trends to watch in 2022 with Logan Fernandez, Chief Security Officer at Pentalog. Before starting, I would like to mention just a few technical details. During the presentation, if you have any questions or curiosities, feel free to type them in the chat, and at the end we will have the Q&A session. Also, for a more interactive discussion, you can ask for permission to use your microphone. This webinar is live streamed on one of our Facebook pages, and also don't forget to leave us a feedback at the end of this session. Thank you for your patience. And now, hello, Logan. We are glad to have you here today.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Georgiana. And yeah, I'm the Chief Security Officer and Data Privacy Officer of Pentalog. I'm also a member of the Executive Committee, and I'm driving a team composed of 15 people with two main missions. The first one is to drive the security strategy among the company and make sure it is aligned with the ambition of the business. And the second one is to develop the security services we propose to our clients, such as governance, SecOps, pen tests, etc. And the 5 security trends I'm about to describe may not be the only trends that exist in 2022, let's be clear, but they are actually the ones my team and I will pay close attention at. Moreover, I didn't identify them all by myself. You know, it's a teamwork and hours of conversation that have led us to think that these 5 topics are very important to handle, you know. Also, if you wish to know more and to have a conversation with me after the event, please feel free to contact me and it will be a pleasure. So regarding the first trend, you know, we have identified, you know, regarding the supply chain management. As a security auditor, I've been assessing a lot of companies which were greatly increasing their security level, you know, the security level of the information system. But most of them were almost negligent regarding the supply chain management. And we all know the famous security questionnaire that contains tons of questions to assess the supplier's security level. But honestly, is it really efficient? And if it is not, do we have other alternatives? So I will try to answer this question by sharing my opinion with you all. But first, let's talk about a little theory here. So regarding the security questionnaire, the security team is building this questionnaire, which, by the way, most of the time reflects the Appendix A of ISO 27001 standard, and then push it to the team of the supplier, you know, in question, in order them to fulfill it. Still in theory, they fulfill everything and send it back to the security team. Then you have the team that is spending time to analyze the answers and interpret the results. And as a conclusion, a go or a no-go is pronounced. You know, this is the theory here. In reality, it doesn't work so well. And I really, really believe this questionnaire does not bring the expected value. Because for me, it is a waste of time for everybody, you know, involved into the process. So I mean the ones who are supposed to fulfill it on the supplier side, and the ones who are supposed to analyze the answers on our side, on the side of the company. So most of the time, we end up with a list of yes, no, with no more comments and zero proof added. And we send this questionnaire to any kind of providers without even taking the time to adapt it to the kind of supplier actually we are talking to, you know. Moreover, to be honest, very, very few suppliers would accept to spend time on this questionnaire. You know, I received very few feedbacks back then when I was using this methodology. And unless this questionnaire is an appendix of the contract, it has absolutely zero value, you know. In the case, of course, of a security issue with this supplier, the supplier in question. So what are the alternatives left, would you ask me? And to my opinion, you can start by building a clear provider management process, which take into account factors that will help you measure the level of threat that represent this provider to you, to your organization, And this level of threat can be measured in different ways, but the most common way, actually in France, it is to measure it through 4 key factors. And the first one is called the penetration. And it basically answers the question, what would be the access I would grant to this supplier? Would they be physical? If yes, are we talking about entry passes, badges, keys, and to what areas? Are they logical? And if yes, are we talking about user access or admin access, etc.? This is the first factor. The second one is about the dependency. And it answers the question, would it be difficult for me to leave this supplier if I wanted to? Would breaking the contract imply fees or penalties? And if yes, how much? And what would be the necessary workload to remove and replace all integrations and connectors related to this supplier in my information system? And again, would that create any delay in my roadmap? The third factor is called the maturity. And it answers the question, does this supplier have at least the same security level than me, than my organization? Does it have a security team? Does it have any security attestation or certification, such as SOC 2 Type 1 and 2, ISO 27001, PCI DSS if you are in a security industry, banking industry, HDS if you are in a health industry? Does it have a clear incident response process for its clients? And the last one, the last factor, is called the trust. And it answers the question, would my relationship with this supplier be good? It's very, very important. And can I get some references from its clients and gather their feedbacks about their own relationship with this supplier? And would this supplier be reactive and responsive to any of my requests? So these are the 4 factors, and they can be evaluated from a range from 1 to 4. It is the basic methodology, but of course you can have the range you like most. And when you have the information and the score for each of these factors, you add them up together in a formula, And the formula is penetration multiplied by dependency, and you divide it by the maturity multiplied by the trust. And so at the end, you obtain a score, and you set up a threshold that's stating that above this score, either you decide to not collaborate with this supplier, so it is data-driven, or you set up an action plan to lower its threat score. But in the case of you setting up an action plan with this provider, make sure that it is an appendix of the contract. Make sure it has a legal value, this action plan. And one more thing about that, let's not forget this thing. The assessment of your suppliers must not be a one-shot exercise, because a lot of companies are assessing suppliers whenever they want to work with them, but then there is no assessment anymore. And it is a mistake here, because it must be done at a certain frequency, to ensure they still comply over the years with the kind of requirements I have listed a minute ago. So, I have listed 4 factors, but of course you are free to decide if you want more or less. And usually the ideal frequency is to conduct these assessments Actually, this is what I do. I conduct this assessment 2 months before the renewal of the contract of each of my critical providers. So this was my opinion about the first trend, regarding the second trend, about automation. The title is a bit confusing here and let the reader supposedly believe that automation has a direct impact on preventing zero-day vulnerabilities. And this is not the intended idea, so I need to clarify the reason behind that. And one of the most valuable tools for a security leader is called the risk analysis. I'm sure most of you already know it, but in short, this exercise usually takes the form of a series of interviews with different stakeholders in the company and make sure that all the teams are involved, and the purpose is to better understand how they are working, with what kind of tools, and to identify the typology of data they are dealing with, And once this information are gathered, we identify the related risk and measure them in terms of probability of occurrence, or also called likelihood, and impact, also called gravity. The result is a list of risks, and what is left to do is to determine whether they are acceptable or not, and if not, to identify what we need to do to mitigate them, And after experimenting several risk analyses over the past years, we have realized that most of them are actually linked to the human factor, of course. So now, if I go back to the original idea, automating processes would allow teams to focus on innovation rather than wasting unnecessary time on maintenance over the information system. And by unnecessary time, let's be clear, I mean time spent on workflows that can be automated, because hackers are totally focused on finding new and innovative ways to infiltrate networks and systems, but we as security team are often understaffed, and we may lack of visibility of the future when this should actually be one of our concerns. So for me, the key to success is to find the right equilibrium between what already exists in the information system today of your organization and what could possibly exist in the long run. That is, having defined security goals for the next 2 to 3 years and making sure that any repetitive task is being automated so that we save as much time as we can. The third trend I want to talk about is around awareness. And how many companies think that having a security expert or security team and security tools was sufficient to protect its business? I believe this is a wrong idea, and I believe the reason is because what is really at stake is not well understood, by other leaders, and they don't see it as a priority, but more as a nice to have that costs money, security costs money in a company. This is what believe many leaders, in many industries. When actually the number one reason to deploy security all of your company is to protect what you are actually building, your assets, your business value, etc. And that's very bad because the impact of a security breach can be disastrous for your company's image and reputation. Just look at the recent issue the company named Okta had to face and how hard it was for this company to face their clients, and to explain to them what happened. So you must deploy security progressively and in a continuous improvement approach, while keeping in mind that risk zero does not exist. And sooner or later, you will have to face a security issue. And that is why you must set up different kinds of measures, would they be preventive or reactive ones, you know. And here, let's talk about security awareness, because I like this exercise because it's the kind of measure that can do both, that can be preventive and reactive at the same time, you know. You have to make sure new employees benefits from a training during their onboarding, and also make sure that trainings are happening at a certain frequency every year and for every single employees in your organization. And so now, if your collaborators are well aware of the threats and know how to identify a phishing attempt, for example, then you have successfully reduced the related risk. You know, that's the preventive part of the measure, because you basically just raise their knowledge about this kind of malicious attempt. And so you also have prevented a potential security breach. Now, let's talk about the hypothesis of the human mistake. And some of your collaborators still clicked on a suspicious mail or attachment by mistake, but immediately follow the instruction you have shared with them in the past, you know, which state, for example, to alert the security team as soon as possible and change all of their password and all credentials they may have shared, you know, in this malicious link, you know. Then, in that case, we are talking about the reactive part of the same measure, which is the training around awareness. Also, you need to make sure the awareness training are up to date. And that is very, very important, you know, because if you intend, for example, to train employees to recognize a phishing attempt just by looking at the sender address or the mistakes in the mail, then you are not doing it right, you know, because these ways to identify phishing attempts were maybe successful like 10 years ago. But nowadays, it's not enough anymore, because as time flies, you know, hackers become more creative and improve their attack scenario as well. You know? So you should instead, just as a matter of an example, teach them that absolutely nobody could ever ask them to share their credentials, you know. And just to finish with this idea, I can see more and more companies adopting new formats of training sessions, and from the traditional slide that they go through one by one to describe what is cybersecurity and why their employees must comply with them all. You know, they are developing gaming programs that allows employees to learn by themselves while playing some kind of games. And I think it's a very, very good idea, you know. For instance, it's more of a specific training rather than just awareness. But for developers, you could be building a vulnerability environment and allow them to try to break through, just like a hacker, you know, and try to find some vulnerabilities. And each vulnerability found has a weight. And by the end of the day, there is a ranking among developers or groups of developers, it does not matter. And the top three usually even win something, you know. And it works very well, you know, because people are enjoying this moment, they are learning a lot, and they are asking for more, you know. So I think it is really, really efficient to work this way. The fourth trend we have identified with my team is about the ROI, or how can we define indicators that are relevant to the executive committee. You know, because a lot of security leaders, a lot of CISOs are struggling to get the attention of the executive committee of their company. But there is an issue here because we are the ones who are able to properly raise interest among other leaders in the company. So how can we achieve this? Well, according to me, one of the keys to identify what really matters to them, and then make the is to identify what really matters to them, and then make the correlation with cybersecurity, rather than just displaying some technical operational security KPIs that you are monitoring. They are useful, the technical and operational KPIs. They are very useful, but for you, for your team, for operational teams, not for the executive committee. They want to see something else, And what usually matters to the executive committee is to see an increase in growth and profit. And profit is increasing when you increase the revenue and decrease the expenses. And by expenses, I don't only mean those who are related to tools, licenses, subscription, acquisition, but also time spent on things that could have been automated. And please see the parallel with my previous speech. And so, as an auditor, I've been assessing security teams, and most of the time, I've seen indeed a lot of relevant operational KPIs, but very rarely some strategic KPIs, or how I like to call them, business-related KPIs. And my opinion is that this thing is missing in the speech of security leaders nowadays. But what's a business-related KPI? For me, it's an indicator that shows the direct benefit for the business. It usually shows how much revenue you generated through your activities, for example. That is, let's take an example. You identify a number of clients who have strong requirements regarding cybersecurity, and for who this topic can be a deal blocker, And during your reporting, you could say, okay, this month we just got 20 more clients, and it generated 2 million euros of revenue. Among all of them, 10 had strong cybersecurity requirements, which represent about 1 million euros that could have been hard to get without our security level, And among these 20, 2 of them were so much into cybersecurity measures and had so strong security requirements that it was a deal blocker from the very beginning, And so if we didn't have this security level, we would have lost 2 deals of about 100K each, This is a kind of speech that gets the attention of the executive committee, trust me. So among other things you can identify, it is also how much money you saved because of security measures, And here I'm not only talking about breaches that you prevented, So if it is the first time you are doing this exercise to identify business-related KPIs, my advice would be, do not aim for perfection from the very beginning, Because if you do so, you will be quickly discouraged when you realize that the mountain that stands in front of you. So instead, my advice would be to start somewhere and humbly accept imperfection, meaning accept that you have KPIs that may lack a little bit of accuracy at the beginning, but you will improve them time by time after experimenting them, you know. So to summarize my idea here, in order to be relevant for the business, you must determine security goals that are aligned with the business, meaning goals that will help the business reach a certain target, you know. And because your goals are correlated and bound to the goals of the company, you will succeed to reach the attention of the executive committee. And the success of this goal should be measurable as well. That's why you have to determine indicators directly linked to your goals in order to track their progress and monitor their effectiveness. And so the last trend we have identified with my team is, I'm sure of it, a trend that everyone already identified, you know, but since the pandemic happened, most companies in the world, if not all of them, have been democratizing the remote work, you know, or work from anywhere. And now that this major crisis is decreasing and that we are progressively going back to normal, we can admit that normality has changed a bit of the past 2 years, you know, compared to the past 2 years. That's because new ways of working have emerged, and of course, related to the remote work. And I believe that's a really good thing, but it has to come with security measures as well, you know. And these security measures might have been already settled as good practices in the company or not. It depends on the size of the company and most of the time the maturity regarding cybersecurity. So, you know, the possibility to do remote work in a company must appear in the risk analysis conducted by the security team, you know, because now employees are now exposed to the new risks that have emerged along the way with the new ways of working, you know. And those risks are highly related to the fact that most of the employees have a poor cybersecurity hygiene when they are working at home, you know. Who has never shared his computer with a family member or a friend for personal use, for a personal purpose, for example? And among the employees, how many are they who use a poor and obvious password for their internet connection, you know, for their Wi-Fi, which is, by the way, probably even not as secured itself as the network of the company, even if you have a strong password, you know, for the connection. Also, working from home means that they are working alone. You know, your employees are then working alone and not surrounded by their teams, you know. So they are not in the context of the company. And this actually raises another risk, that they do not consider the security practices as much as they should do, you know. And so to make sure employees are working in a secure environment, companies need to understand that they have to adapt their policies and tools, you know. That is, just as a matter of examples, making sure that every critical tools or servers can only be accessed using a VPN and cannot be accessed directly through from the internet, you know. And the security team, in a collaboration with the infrastructure team, the IT team, all the tech team, should ensure that the multi-factor authentication is possible and is activated, you know, for every kind of asset you might have, you know. And one last thing, and related to one of the trends I have highlighted a minute ago, with this new way of working, you should also adapt your security training sessions, and you should have dedicated remote work practices, to let employees know that advantages around the remote work also come with requirements, and you can do remote work and you still can work in a secure way. So that was it for the security trends. So I see now there are some questions, so I will try to answer them. What is Pentalog's strategy and perspective upon the future challenges? Well, I think I kind of answered this question during my presentation, because as I told you in the beginning, these my team and I decided to focus on these 5 key points. We have experienced, we have identified through conversation with peers from other companies or Cyberwatch or even inside the company that there are a lot of topics to handle. But we need prioritization, because you cannot do everything, at the same time. So in 2022, the strategy is to focus, to have a dedicated focus on these 5 key topics, and of course, around that, if we have time to grow our maturity level and our security level in other topics as well. So I hope this answers the question. Second question, what are the main cloud migration issues we should take into consideration? Since starting 2020, many companies transferred their data towards cloud. That's a really interesting question. That's a really good question. And actually, yes, it's been several years that we have realized that a lot of companies are moving to the cloud, and there is a very good reason behind that. It's the fact that it has a lot of advantages, and most of the time it costs much less money than having your own data center or your own servers in your company to handle. But I would say the thing is to identify your key assets, the data that is really critical for you, and it usually goes with the data classification, the publicly, internal, confidential, secret, etc. And for the ones who are really critical and confidential, my advice would be to encrypt them, even at rest, encrypt them and keep the key on your possession and not stored in the cloud, And the next question is also related to the cloud. How safe is the cloud? Is it totally bulletproof? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. And that is why I would recommend indeed to encrypt your data, your most critical data inside the cloud, So I understand that multi-factor authentication should be a standard in this new way of working. Yeah, I really believe that. And I really believe multi-factor authentication should also come with good practices, such as a single sign-on, because if you don't have SSO in your company, what your employees will do will be to have the same password in every tools you have, you know. So for this reason, first of all, you are creating a risk, a big risk upon the shoulders of your company where you could just use the SSO. It will be easier for everyone. And for the multi-factor authentication, it would mean that you have to activate that only once, you know, once for all the tools, I mean, and not to receive your one-time password in your phone, for example, for each one of the connection of the tools you might have, you know. I really believe that security should be built around the teams and the employees' needs, rather than just building barriers that will have them think that we are just here to bother them, you know. I really believe that we can build what I call smart security. So other question, do you think that we became more vulnerable due to the pandemic and now coming suddenly out of it? It's hard to say. Honestly, I'm not sure to have the right answer here. Did we become more vulnerable? I don't know. But as I stated, we are going through new ways of working. So we are becoming more vulnerable if we don't take into account these new ways of working. Because new ways of working also imply that the security team is finding new ways of securing, you know, our the data and the asset, the critical value of the company as well. So if the security team is moving along with the trends, you know, and the new ways of working, then I believe we are not becoming more vulnerable, you know. Security team has to adapt, you know. How can you best avoid a cyber attack? That's a great question. That's a great question. I'm not sure there is a best practice to avoid a cyber attack. I really believe that it is the right combination between several security measures, you know. And I really believe, as I said earlier, actually, this could be my answer. How can you best avoid the cyber attack? If you want to best avoid a cyber attack, make sure that you just gained, as a security team, the trust of the employees of your company. You know, I really believe that. Because if you don't have the trust of the people of your company, then they will try to break through, to find alternatives, do not follow the security practices or security measures you are setting up, you know. And since, for me, the higher risk is related to human, then if you have built a good relationship with every teams and every employees, then you have made a huge step toward the securitization of your company. This would be my answer. What is the difference between closed source and open source? Which is better? And what security solution is best for protecting the information system connected to the internet? So difference between closed source and open source, honestly, I may not be the best person to give you the right answer. Which is better? I don't know either, because, you know, it depends on so many factors. It depends on the context of your company. It depends on the criticality of the project you are handling, and for which you need to choose between closed source and open source. I like open source. I like open source because it allows everyone to see how things are working, and it brings a certain transparency, and I believe transparency is a good way to how to say it in English. It's a good way to reinforce, the trust between different parties, between different stakeholders. So yeah, I would prefer open source, but I think it's just my opinion, and I'm sure that a lot of people would prefer the opposite, And so what's the best solution to protect the information system? Here again, it's a combination. I would say make sure to have antivirus on your IT system, on every laptops and every servers. Make sure to have firewalls activated, but also please make sure that they are configured depending on the teams we are talking to, because the very first time, for the anecdote, the very first time I have set up antivirus for my company, I had the same configuration of this antivirus for every teams in the company, And about 1 hour later, every developers of the company came at me to tell me they couldn't work anymore, because depending on the teams, they don't have the same need, need of power, need of performance of their computer. And the antivirus can consume a lot of this power, so you need to adapt. What do you think about ethical hacking? Can it improve or do worse? I really like ethical hacking. And related to ethical hacking, I really like everything has to do with bug bounty. I believe it has mixed benefits, complementary benefits with pen testing, because pen testing would be like a photo in time of the security level of your product, when the bug bounty could be just a video all over the year of the security level of your company, So regarding that, I think it has a lot of value, but I also believe that you should carefully build a policy around that, because if you are not well equipped to handle ethical hacking, then you may be overwhelmed by the amount of ethical hackers that come at you. And should we be afraid of future cyber data attacks war? Should we be afraid? I don't know. I'm not, I don't know what the future reserves us. So I don't know if we should be afraid. What is for sure, it is that, as time flies, the technology is growing, is becoming more innovating, more disrupting. And so I really believe that companies have to take into account security, because when I'm debating about security with a lot of leaders, not security leaders, with leaders of different industries, they don't really see the need behind that, and that's because, they are telling me, okay, this will never happen to me. This will never happen to my company. And this is a very, very wrong idea. It will happen one day, So you really need to make sure you have done the necessary efforts to secure your business assets. And that's it. I think. Is the time up?
I think that was the questions. Did you see another one?
I think so. How could I approach a career in cybersecurity when having no experience while still in university? Yeah, so I will answer this last question before ending because I really like this kind of answer. For the anecdote, I was in a university specialized in cybersecurity, so I know the deal here. It's okay to have zero experience, you know. If you want to have a career in cybersecurity, you can either go to the university and have a specialization toward cybersecurity, or train yourself through different programs and training sessions. You know, you can be certified. You can get certifications such as ISO 27001 lead auditor, lead implementer, ISO 27005 risk manager. You know, there are a lot of certification. These are usually programs that last during 1 week, and at the end of the week, you just get an exam, and if you succeed, you get a certification, so a diploma. So for me, it's good when you have no experience to do these kind of things, you know, and to be to try to be really careful and attentive to what happens in the world, you know. So conducting a cybersecurity watch and trying to build your network, you know, to have a cybersecurity expert around you, you know, for example, in LinkedIn, so that you, time after time, you progressively get to know more things, you know. That would be my advice. And that's it for me.
Okay, if that was all, thank you, Logan, for the information here with us today. I think they are really helpful for all of us.
Thank you very much.
And in the end, I would like to thank you all for the questions and for being with us today. And we're waiting on you for the next sessions of this week. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye. Have a great day.